Okay, everyone, I'm just going to begin with by saying good morning and welcome to this event. On behalf of Synergos, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the Shining the Light on End of Life Matters workshop series. Is Abate, and I am Director of Philanthropy, working with the Synergos Global Philanthropist Circle, which was founded by David Rockefeller and his daughter, Peggy Delaney. The GPC, as we call it, unites the world's top philanthropic families who are dedicated to solving complex issues around the world. Our members find allies, engage in various dimensions of inner work, build trust, and share a goal of collective action. Synergos defines this as bridging leadership. As a philanthropy partner to our East Coast families, I have had the privilege to discover what matters most to them. This workshop series was driven by our GPC members for our GPC members and close network. Therefore, I'm extremely honored to be able to showcase the important work of Jeannie Blaustein, Myra Hernandez, Anita Windsor, and a little later in Singapore, Marianne Tsao. My role over the last year was that of facilitator. It started with one-on-one conversations, then led to little group discussions, blossomed into brainstorming sessions, and got polished off to today. When my mother died very unexpectedly last year, I was so unprepared. I have to confess, I leaned in closer to these amazing women and men to help me through my mourning process. That is why this collective work is extremely important to me. And I believe it is important for all of us because it is a journey we must face, no exceptions. Coming to terms with death and our feelings about it are an important aspect of inner work. This series uses bridging leadership methodologies so that informed decisions can be taken. I have to highlight the generosity of Myra Hernandez and the Institute do Zielen for not only providing our space today, but also these amazing crystals and the unique contemplative practices that Myra has adapted, especially for the series. And I have to express my deepest gratitude to the thoughtful expertise of Jeannie Blaustein and Brad Wolf, who curated our speakers today and made this amazing program that we're going to experience. And I have to shine light on Anita Windsor for sharing her personal family journey and for your steadfast support of this whole entire process and the work that you're doing with Final Exit. And I wish to acknowledge your sister, Monica Windsor, who's a GPC member and a board member of Synergos. Thank you for being here. So there's just one little thing I'd like to draw your attention to, and that is Peggy Delaney wrote this amazing book. It's called Finding Our Way, How to Move Beyond Trauma and Serving with Love. Jeannie's holding it up right now. I think it's a really appropriate tool for our workshop because we strive to transform vulnerabilities into strengths. And in the words of Dr. Charlie Viotti, who's right here from the Villa Mary Claire Hospice, we have to strive to change the discourse from dying with dignity to living fully with love and service. So I thank you for being here today. And with that, I want to bring everybody into the room, and I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself. Just your name, and if you could just state one word about how you're feeling today, and then pass it to the next person.
Hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth and I'm feeling grateful.
Hi, good morning. My name is Marcella and I'm so excited. I'm Jarle Norman. Good morning. I feel thankful.
My name is Helena, and I feel intrigued.
My name is Lina. I'm very empowered.
My name is Demetra. I'm feeling open.
Good morning, my name is Meredith, and I'm feeling very peaceful.
Good morning, my name's Lisa. I feel great love.
Hello, I'm Rose, and I feel uplifted.
Good morning, I'm Sally, and I'm also feeling open.
Good morning, I'm Monica, and I'm feeling curious.
I'm Anita, and I'm going to use the word intrigued again.
Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm feeling hopeful.
Hello, I'm Mayra, and I'm feeling very moved.
Good morning, David. I feel connected.
Hello, Catherine Tucker, flustered, late arrival. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Schechter, and I'm feeling motivated.
Hi, I'm Lois Perelson Gross, and I'm feeling grateful.
Good morning, Charlie Violati from Villa Marie Claire Hospice.
How do you feel?
I feel good.
I'm Tracy. Good morning. I feel happy.
Thank you so much for sharing a bit of yourself with us. And without further ado, I'd like to invite Jeannie and Brad to lead us into the program.
Thank you, Claudia, so much. Thank you, Synergos. Thank you, Myra and the Instituto for being our hosts today. I think our work is done. You're all open and curious and happy. I don't think we need to do anything at all today, but I think it's great that we're starting the day with that set of possibilities already in our hearts. Let me just put my stuff down before I spill it. So I'm Jeannie Blaustein, and I am a GPC member. This is my colleague, Brad Wolf, with Reimagine End of Life. And I want to also acknowledge that one of our other board members is here, Corey Kennard, who's you'll be hearing from later, and another board member, Lois Perelson Gross, who's in the back. So we are fortunate. Corey is here from Detroit. Lois is here from the Upper East Side. So we've got, the distribution covered, and we're very honored to have both of you with us here today. I want to just say a couple words about why I'm here. It may relate to some of the reasons why some of you are here. But I suspect we each have our own reasons for being here. I grew up in a family where no one talked about death. I was one of those families. We also didn't fight. We also didn't talk about money. You may know that there's a podcast called Death, Sex, and Money. We didn't talk about any of it. So that podcast has my name all over it. But in any event, we didn't talk about death because, of course, there had been a death. My grandmother had died very young of breast cancer, and my mother never talked about it. My mother had been a teenager. And so what do you do when you grow up in a family where you don't talk about anything? You become a psychologist. So I did that, and then I realized that actually didn't really touch the questions that I was grappling with. So then I became a hospice volunteer, and then I studied to become a hospital chaplain, and actually had the pleasure and privilege of working with Lois as a hospital chaplain intern at Mount Sinai on a palliative care unit. And then I heard on the radio that there was going to be a festival talking about death in San Francisco. And I said to my husband, nobody could talk about death around the dining room table. If all of San Francisco was talking about death and dying, I got to see this. And I literally booked a flight and flew out to San Francisco a little over, just about 6 years ago. And I walked into an event. It was a room smaller than this one, but still kind of industrial. And there was one of those disco balls on the ceiling, and there was wine in the corner, and there was a philosopher, tech entrepreneur, talking about the development of an immortality gene in conversation with a palliative care doctor. And people were laughing and crying and hugging. And I walked up to the guy with the mic who I didn't know, and I said, "This is awesome. Have you thought of taking this on the road? I'd love to bring this to New York." So that guy was Brad. This was his brainchild in 2016. And we started talking, and 9 months later, we gave birth to a nonprofit. And Reimagine End of Life is the outcome of that chance meeting in San Francisco. So I tell you that story just to, in a sense, invite you to begin to think about your own stories and how you got here today. Because as Peggy's book says, it's referenced by Claudia, I'm going to just read one line. She says, this is about work on retreats, but she says, here we address how to build our inner resources to overcome our own traumas, to find the courage to play our most effective role in our fragmented societies, to create greater trust and harmony. So our feeling about this work is that it is both personal and communal, that the ways in which we deal with trauma, past, anticipated, current, has everything to do with how we show up in the world, how we show up for each other, how we show up for ourselves, in good and in difficult times. So with that, I want to introduce Brad and invite you to say a little bit about how you got here, what we do at Reimagine, not because this is an advertisement for Reimagine, but because what we have learned over these last 6 years has informed what we're going to do together today. So we want to set the context for that, and then we're going to jump into the day.
All right. Hi, everybody. This is going to be a really, don't want to set the expectations too high, but an incredible day, mostly because you're all here and we're all here together, and we're going to dig into something hard, and it turns out that facing hard things is one of the best ways to connect. I am so grateful to Jeannie, who I've had the great pleasure of meeting now over the last 6 years. We haven't seen each other since the pandemic until this weekend, and so it's just such a great opportunity. I'm from San Francisco and flew out here, and indeed, I met Jeannie at that first Reimagine festival in San Francisco. And so what led me to work on a festival about death? I get this question. It makes a lot of sense why someone would be interested in that when I myself am quite fearful of death. It's definitely probably the most existentially challenging part of my own life. And I grew up with parents on my dad's side, both of whom were prisoners in Auschwitz. My grandfather's job, and I'm only really digging into this now, his job was to carry the bodies to and from the crematoriums, and had to burn and dispose of the bodies and all the souls that were there. And my grandmother's 101 and is still alive in Los Angeles, so I just got to see her last weekend, and it was really, really special. But I grew up with a lot of fear about death and why people treat each other the way that we do in our culture. What is it that would allow us in our limited time on earth to create so much suffering? But then on the other side, what is it about life that makes it so powerful that we want to keep living through all of these traumas that happen for us or to us? And but fast forward with this fear about death. When I was in college, the girl that I had loved growing up, she was diagnosed with a rare form of pediatric cancer. And despite my fear about death, I was found out, maybe because I had been there thinking about my grandparents' story, I was able to be there for her when she was in the hospital, and I started playing music for her. That was my hobby, and she happened to be at Stanford Pediatric Hospital, and I was at the university there, so I could easily bring my guitar over every day and start playing music for her by her bedside. And that's when I really realized the power of art and creativity as a form of connection related to death, but related to life and healing. And it was just the privilege of my life, really, to be there with Sarah through a couple of years of these concerts and songwriting sessions and discussions. Eventually, she passed away, and that really inspired me, having seen her own end-of-life experience, to try to think, how do we help people connect more meaningfully while we're alive? Why do we need, with a 9/11, where those few days after, Chris, my colleague who's here, Chris Thompson, where is Chris? In the back there, he was in New York during 9/11 and talks about those couple days after and how everyone seemed to come together. But what is it about death that brings us together? So I was hoping to connect people more meaningfully in life, not thinking that death would be the thing that I would end up focusing on. But I started eventually a pediatric cancer foundation for my friend Sarah, got deeply involved in the cancer community, started thinking a lot about inspiration and where it comes from, incubated something with folks at Facebook, trying to subvert the belly of the beast from the inside, so to speak. But eventually was hired by an organization called IDEO, a design thinking organization that talks about the future. And they were interested in reimagining the end-of-life experience for ourselves and for our loved ones. And they hired me to think about the intersection of art and the end of life. There's something about that they felt, but what is it? And I think it makes so much sense because words can't really encapsulate all of our emotional experience around what's hard. There's something perhaps spiritual, something heart-centered, and a lot of the folks in the end-of-life community in the space, there's so many logistical issues that emerge in dealing with death, but people don't want to talk about death. And so it's hard for people to adopt all of these solutions that might help make facing death easier when we don't want to talk about it in the first place. So we end up dealing with it right at the very end when we're just in the midst of a crisis and it's coming at us full force. So the question was, what would it look like to really open up a conversation earlier about this? What would it look like if we brought people in and actually used different modalities to meet people where they're at? Music, comedy, healthcare, spirituality, religion, culture. There's so many different ways to talk about the subject that touches all of us. It's really the one great unifier we have after birth. And so there might be an opportunity to bring people around this topic in community to open up this dialogue. And so what did we find? In this first festival that Jeannie talked about in San Francisco, we had 40 events across the city, and they were in hospitals, they were in comedy clubs, they were in graveyards, they were in places like Google, they were in City Hall, they were in the Black Community Center, they were in churches and mosques. The events were taking place everywhere, everyone talking about mortality and death, and authentically connecting in ways that were surprising. And what did we learn? We started doing focus groups to understand why are people showing up. And the four modes that we saw that people wanted to connect around, why people would want to talk about death, we put them on the wall over there. And they're actually going to be in this booklet that Jeannie is going to talk a little bit more about. And it's going to be some of the guiding principles or guiding pathways today. People want to engage around death because we wonder about it. We're curious about it. There's a spiritual questions that we have, there's scientific questions that we have, there's religious questions that we have. It brings up so much that we don't know. 7 billion people are alive right now, and 100 billion people have died. But we don't know anything about that, right? It's something we don't know. With all the lived experience we have in this room, hundreds and hundreds of years, it's the great mystery. So there's so much to wonder about. So people come wanting to engage in these questions and this in wonder. Then there's questions, though, around preparation. How do we prepare for death? How do we get ready for the inevitable? Either at the last second as it's approaching, or maybe in advance. How do we help our family members and our loved ones prepare for that time? Then, after death, remembrance. How do we remember those that we've lost? How do we grieve? How do we process what we've gone through? How do we create rituals and celebrations? What happens after? It stays with us for a lifetime, but people come to these spaces thinking about a loved one or their own past experience with mortality. And then finally, there is this idea of living fully, that there's something about our impermanence on Earth that teaches us something about what it means to live. our finite time, what do we do with it? And when we confront ourselves with that mortality, perhaps we end up with a more palpable sense of what it means to be alive. So those are the 4 modes by which people show up. And then I want to just highlight one other, which is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. That really undergirds all of our work. And as we've been doing this work of bringing hundreds of events together in these different cities now that we're in, and tens of thousands of people showing up in these communities talking about end of life, what we've heard from all these different communities is that the way that we live and the way that we die are very connected. Some of the same inequities that happen in life happen as related to death, and vice versa. It's on and on. And so we can't really understand that experience for ourselves without being curious about others and understanding their lived experience and their experience grieving and facing mortality in their own communities. And so everything we do also has that lens, and we want to invite all of us today to also be in inquiry about that lens.
So just to pick up on that, when we talk about preparing for end of life, I think many of us assume that we will have a warning sign. We'll know that we're sick, that there's time, that we'll be old. That's what we tell our children, right? Oh, grandma's not going to die till she's really old, or I'm going to be here till I'm really old. Well, my father choked to death at a business meeting in his 60s. No warning, no goodbye, nothing. And I pulled a muscle last year that turned out to be ovarian cancer. No warning, just a diagnosis that changed my life. So those of you whom I've met before might remember me with long brown curly hair. This is my chemo hair.
It's beautiful, by the way.
Thank you. But my point is that we always think that these things come out of the blue. We're living in the blue. We're in the blue. So the idea of working with these questions for ourselves today and letting the end, whatever that looks like, inform today is really our goal. And our goal for today is to help all of us deepen our inquiry around what that work looks like. What does it mean to wonder? What does preparation look like? I don't know what your questions are, but whatever they are, I hope we can help you surface them. We'll be talking in small groups, in pairs, we'll be doing some work together. And as Brad said about art, there are things that we experience that we cannot put words to. And for this, I am deeply grateful to Myra and her incredible team for surrounding us and bringing us in touch with these crystals, which also have an energy that I cannot put into words. Myra's going to talk much more about that in just a couple of minutes. So our goals for today are, again, referencing Peggy's words, to begin or continue some of that inner work. And I want to just ask and acknowledge that sometimes that brings up vulnerability. So I would like to just invite everyone here to help us build a safe and a confidential and comfortable space for those conversations. So if everybody is comfortable doing so, I'd love to hear just a resounding yes to supporting each other in this space. Can I hear a yes? All right, perfect, thank you. So we'll remember that when we're talking, and feel free to share your own experience, but not the experience of anybody else. I want to just also acknowledge that we're going to take just 2 minutes right now, literally 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to turn to the person next to you and say, share for 1 minute each, and I'll give you a bell, why you came and whether or not you're scared of death. Simple questions, okay? So find your partner, and if you need to include a third person, like I see a pair here and a pair here, but you need a partner. Can you guys do a 3? Okay, great. So on your mark, get set, go. Need to switch, 5 seconds. Okay, take a switch and let the person share about their experience. Okay, I hate to interrupt because I know that these are important exchanges happening. I'm going to call you back together. Thank you so much. So I wonder if there's anybody who would be willing to share a little, just a couple words about what came up or what you learned in your 2-minute conversation.
Ideally, a question. Is there a question that is arising for you at this juncture?
Right. Suzanne.
So Lois and I were talking about how, you know, we have both dealt in some form with this for other people that we love, but not for ourselves. And I didn't even think about doing it for myself today. So it's interesting, and apparently I ought to be thinking about that. So that's not really a question, but maybe the question is, how do we think of it for ourselves?
Perfect. What does this mean for me? Anybody else? One more question? Yes, Tracy.
Thank you. Yeah, so Dr. Violati and me, well, we work together at Villa Marie Claire, which is a hospice facility. So what we often struggle with and what brings us here to the conversation is to try to figure out a way to help people break through the denial. And like you said, Jeannie and Brad, we're all going to be approaching death, our own death, and a family members. And how can we help make a breakthrough with the people we're working with so they start to just be open to the conversation, because it's very much about avoidance and denial, and like you say, put it off, put it off, put it off, as if somehow by putting off the conversation, we're avoiding our own mortality, our own death.
Beautiful. So I just want to draw your attention, I know you can't see because there's this incredible crystal right here, which we'll hear more about in just a minute. But behind it, there are these 4 panels. And we want to invite you, there's a bunch of markers in a basket, over the course of the day to write your questions. They may or may not fit perfectly into one of those 4 pillars, but we invite you to write them. They will guide, as Claudia said, Synergos this is the first of a series of events. So your questions will guide what we do going forward, and we really want to hear from you. So please feel free to scribe on there, okay? And I'll turn it back to Brad.
Yeah, we really believe at Reimagine that questions in general are a way in. That if we open ourselves up to the idea of framing things in questions, that it's an invitation. And so we want to invite ourselves to get very curious today. Curious about everything that arises, all of our fears, all of our hopes, all of our grief, because you'll find that these things are so connected, I think. And if we lead with love, you'll see that fear and love, or pain and love, grief and love, they're so intertwined. And so we want to explore all of that with you today, and you'll have an opportunity at various moments to go over there and write questions. And also I want to point out that in your booklet, I think you each have pens, but in the back of the booklet, there's a couple blank pages near the very back that are just blank for you to jot down any notes or questions that come up for you, so you can keep track of those for yourself. And our goal at the end is to source as many questions as we can, and we'll send out that list to everybody here, so we all leave with a deeper inquiry, a deeper set of what might we ponder about in our own lives. And those questions can guide us in conversations with our family, with our friends, with our physicians, with our spiritual leaders. It's going to be an invitation to dig into this work together. And so, this is really, when we think about at Reimagine setting up spaces in a container to transform this conversation, we believe, yes, it starts with this kind of inquiry, but then it moves toward transformation, right? The inquiry is the first step. The invitation can happen through the arts. It can happen through spirituality, right? We talked about it. It can happen through entertainment. It can happen through health. There's all these ways in, but then what? And so, at Reimagine, we have developed programs that help people move from inquiry to action across many different levers, from the personal to the political to justice to community to private. It touches so much of our lives. And later on today, we're going to talk about how we might even grow and expand ourselves through the hard parts. What might it actually bring to us, moving from a fear-based place as a culture to a baseline, and then actually toward a place where we're actually thriving and connecting in a deeper way with all of our humanity across lines that actually divide us, and that death may have the power to do that because we all are alive. So with that in mind, I would love Jeannie to talk about what we're up to the rest of the day here.
So today, we're going to move directly from this introduction into an experience with Myra and the crystals. Then we are going to take a coffee break and a little bio break, and then we're going to have a conversation. I'll be in conversation with Pastor Corey Kennard, as I mentioned, one of our Reimagine Board of Directors members, who is his full bio is in your booklets, but he is spent over a decade working at the bedside as a hospital chaplain, and is now in a position to, as he shared with me last night, to make some of the changes he was hoping would happen while he was working at the bedside for over a decade. So he's in a position of administration and decision making, but has brings a wealth of spiritual and medical and administrative knowledge and wisdom to this conversation. So after that, we'll be having lunch, and there will be an open but somewhat prompted discussion for you at lunch to continue to deepen the conversation and work with your own questions and each other. Then
you skipped the
somebody
funny
very
part.
important. Before lunch, we're going to have an opportunity to delve into creativity and this issue with comic Ben Wasserman, who is a Brooklyn-based comedian. He'll share with you who has experienced a tremendous amount of loss in recent years and has brought his own art to facing that loss and that grief. Then lunch, and then we'll come back from lunch, and we had planned to be in-person conversation with another one of our board members, Leon Ford, whose picture is over here. Leon is unfortunately in Pittsburgh dealing with a family emergency. But I told him last night that we would all, Brad and I asked him what helps him when he's under stress, and he said breath. So I asked him if it would be okay if I invoked him and invited all of you and us to take a breath to support Leon. We may be able to speak to him later on speaker. We don't know how his day is going to go, but if everybody could just take a minute for a soul who you don't know, but who I can tell you is an extraordinarily resilient, brilliant human being, just to take a breath of support. Thank you. We'll close out the day with our full panel, including Anita, who was one of the original creators of this whole series, with questions around medical aid in dying, and we'll hear more from Anita about what she's been thinking about and where the series is going, the next Synergos gathering on this topic, and opportunities for Q&A and conversation. So that's the day in a nutshell. And now it's my pleasure to turn this over to my fellow GPC member, Myra, who many of you know, and to again thank you all so much for being here, and I look forward to spending these hours together.
Thank you, everybody. Jeannie, who would have thought that a few years ago we met at a Synergos event. She started sharing what she was doing with Reimagine. I shared about the crystals, and we said, they belong together. We should do something. And here we are. This couldn't be possible if Synergos was not part of it. In two ways that I don't want to take it just like, easily, but Claudia, the whole staff has been instrumental in making this happen. So thank you very much. They've worked very, very hard. And then the other thing, as they were talking, it's like Synergos inner work. That has been an integral part of my life. I have a background of business, design, communication, strategy, but I've always been moved by spirit, by nature, by beauty, and since I was very young, it's like I knew that my life was to be of service. Then, I don't know, life took me on a spiritual search, and spirit finds its way to introduce me to crystals. Crystals are an amazing tool for consciousness. They're created by Mother Nature, they bring beauty, and they move energy in such an amazing way. Energy is everywhere. It's really, really everywhere. And crystals, when they work with intention, they help us direct the energy, share it, amplify it, and transform it. So I am beyond grateful and excited every time that I have an opportunity to share what the crystals can do for us, because they are here for us. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, because of course they've been placed with intention, and the invitation is for you to feel the energy, for you to benefit from the energy, what we all are learning and experiencing so many things in this workshop. It's on a mental level, on an emotional level, and on a physical level. And actually, when we connect our body, our mind, and our spirit, it's when energy really, really flows. So that's going to be my invitation. So the largest crystal, we actually call it Vivek, because it's a miniature version of a bigger crystal that we have. It's a Lemurian seed crystal. It's called Lemurian, thank you to the civilization of Lemuria. They lived in nature, they really managed a lot of energy. And Lemurian crystals have that seed, they have a lot of information, and they can help us connect with other realms. Then we have a lot of obsidian. So The Lemurian energy helps us to bring clarity, to elevate, to amplify, and the obsidian is protective, it's grounding, and also helps us just like release all the energy. Then we have Alta, which is a smoky quartz. So also smoky quartz, it's a great tool to help us release all the fears, all the negativity, everything that no longer helps us. So you can connect if you have things that you want to release. We have Roma over there, and Roma, it's an celestial quartz. So the quartz helps us, like celestial quartz helps us connect to other realms, but also be very connected to the earth. So it's a great balancing aspect. And then here we have cocoa, which is another type of quartz. It's called skeletal quartz, and it integrates all the different parts of us. It also helps us connect with other realms and helps us remove lots of obstacles. I like to think of cocoa and like removing obstacles between us and our loved ones that are not here anymore, or actually an obstacle that can help us feel them here that can help us feel here with us. I'm going to share a very personal experience. This crystal here, I had it next to my grandfather when he had cancer. He was a very healthy, energetic person, and then it's like in a year he was really, really sick. So we had the intention that crystal was going to help us have his energy, have his consciousness, have all his wisdom, and that I could be able to access it at any time that I wanted to access it. So every time that I feel that I need his presence, I'll just like really connect with the crystal. Spirit has also shown me that there are other ways that we can connect with our loved ones. And for instance, my grandfather's business is with corn with tortillas, and now I've learned that every time that I see corn, a tortilla, or a corn chip, I feel his presence. A very good example is that actually when I was meeting one of my vendors to acquire the largest crystal that we have, I was nervous because there were vendors that I had not known. They were recommended because we only work with vendors that we know that they do this work with integrity. I mean, it's a very complicated industry. And the minute that I was walking in to negotiate, I see that they were eating a bag of tortilla chips. So I was like, thank you, Grandpa, for being here. So then we have two more crystals over there. We have a black tourmaline, Gloria, and we have a citrine. Those are going to help us to experience what is to move energy with intention. I believe that you were given these magic envelopes at the beginning. You should have two. And what we're going to do later today is to think about an intention, something that we want to either manifest, bring into our lives, or get rid of. We have to be very intentional in the sense of writing the date, thinking very well what is it that we want, because it needs to fit into this few lines, and then sign it and seal it. If there's something that what you wrote that you want to let go, get rid of, connect with the black tourmaline. If it's something that you want to bring in to your life, then connect with the citrine. More instructions will be given later. We also have a beautiful picture of Queen, and that's her name, of a rose quartz. What we're working on is with the intersection of art and the energy of crystals. We're trying to find ways to make the crystals accessible to more people, and also to start being gentler with our carbon footprint. But anyways, crystals are here for us, and what I want us to do right now is to really start feeling and engaging with the energy that is here for you and with you. So I invite you to sit comfortably with your back straight and just start moving energy with the intention of connecting your body, your mind, and your spirit. We're going to share 5 minutes of music. It's a music that was created, specially designed to help you connect with the crystals, with your body, with our heart. So if you don't have any practice meditation, just like try to go inside, try to relax. Because if you go inside, you will find that inside of us, there's a full universe that is always connected to the bigger universe, and it's willing, yearning, wanting to feel that connection expanded. So here we go.
I'm excited. I see questions appearing on the wall. So thank you for that. And as they come up, don't feel that you only get one shot at your question. So feel free to go back.